tornado that was confirmed in our far eastern county of Hopkins County. But before we get too far into this, make sure you download that Weather 225 free mobile app, just because this is a one-man show. I'm going to be controlling the radar and everything, and we're not going to be able to get to every single warning on our social media. So if you're on our social media, download that app, because we're going to streamline the alerts through there as we do live coverage. So we're going to start off by stopping the radar. This is the current situation that we've got right now. We'll probably go in and out with a few of these warnings, but I have a feeling that activity is going to start to get a little bit increase as we see these move further into a better environment, closer into the Metroplex. And in fact, I already see kind of a handful of areas to watch just along the head of the line of storms. This is a really sloppy presentation, but there's some gusty winds. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe Decatur, so Wise and Denton County, get another severe thunderstorm warning or so with this. But the current warning that we have right now is this storm that we've got here in Palo Pinto County moving into Parker County. And looks like we have a new report. Someone reported, or one of the stations reported, or weather, like a weather recording station, one of them reported a 71.4 mile per hour wind gust, or 62 knots, at the Mineral Wells Municipal Airport. So very strong winds. We still have that potential for a QLCS tornado too, embedded with this line of storms. So there's a lot going on here. Looks like another report of that 65 to 71 mile per hour winds are occurring over there. All right. So we're going to go back to reflectivity, and we're going to show you what's going on. So just a broad view across the area. If you're tuning in and you're wondering what's going on, we have this line of storms that is moving closer and closer to the Metroplex. Now, these aren't moving too quickly. They're moving, well, I guess they increased their speed a little bit. Earlier storm motion was about 35 miles per hour, but now we're talking roughly 45 miles per hour off to the east. And the reason we're highlighting this storm is not only because it has a warning with it, but this one had a tornado with it. I'm not sure if it was confirmed, but a tornado warning with it back when it was near Breckenridge. So this one is fairly concerning, just because it's already had some tornadic activity with it. And in fact, you can still see some areas of inflow feeding into the storm, or maybe as it moves off to the east into a better environment, it'll potentially go back to a tornadic threat. But right now, this is the only warning we have in the North Texas coverage area right now. It's Palo Pinto and Parker counties, but it wouldn't surprise me if we start to see the segment just to the north of that in Jack and Wise County start to become severe as well. Another update, now that I see just out of the corner of my eye, that warning that had that tornado near in Hopkins County earlier, that one is still going. So that's a nasty storm, but we're not going to cover that because that is just outside of this coverage area, and we don't cover those far eastern and northeastern Texas counties. So we're going to stay on this. And like we said, once again, make sure you download the free Weather 225 mobile app. This isn't to sound like a plug, but because I'm the only one in the studio, we're not going to be able to post these alerts on our social media. They're going to be going directly to the app because it's a manual send. So if you want those alerts, make sure that you download that. It's free. You don't have to sign up for anything. Not to be a plug, but we're going to be streamlining those warnings from social media over to the app as we do this coverage. So, all right, so let's check out what's going on. We've had reports of 71 mile per hour winds already with this system, with this particular storm, excuse me. We've even had reports of 1-inch hail, that is severe level hail. And it continues to move off to the east around 45 miles per hour. Okay, so that report is from the Storm Prediction Center. That is not a storm report. So we'll just keep going down the line, trying to check behind the scenes if we have any sort of reports coming in from this besides that 71 mile per hour wind, just so we can relay the best information. Okay, so airport weather warning, and that is for the municipal. So let's go back to base reflectivity real quick and just show you one more wide view, just because there's not a whole lot going on. In fact, I'm going to actually take off the little rotation trackers and just leave the TDS, but you can see where these little triangles are, where the radar is trying to put together that there might be some embedded rotation. And as we continue to see, it looks like they extended that watch further to the east outside of our coverage area. So as you can see, these little embedded spin-ups potentially developing with this line. Not everyone's going to see a tornado, but as we transition into this line of storms, we're going to be talking about the damaging wind threat increasing and embedded QLCS tornadoes potentially increasing as well. We have kind of a sloppy presentation with the velocity showing up here, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with the northern portion of that storm. But I do believe that we're going to be transitioning into more of a 60, 65, maybe even 70 mile per hour wind type setup. And it actually looks like there is a bunch of tornado warnings just to our east in the Texarkana, Clarkville, and near Longview. So just to our east, we have a bunch of tornadoes potentially trying to develop, but for the Metroplex area, we're talking just this line of storm. So I actually want to zoom in now that we have a new scan in and just take a look at this, especially with that hail core, because it looks like it's coming up some as we saw those colors on reflectivity indicating potential for hail when we were getting into, and I'll show you real quick, we're getting into the dark purples and even the charcoal black color here. That is indicative of potentially some hail with that. And in fact, it looks like they just updated this severe thunderstorm warning to a considerable severe thunderstorm warning. And what that means is it could be capable of considerable damage. We're talking 70 mile per hour winds are possible with this. In fact, they've actually been confirmed a handful of times close to the Mineral Wells area. We're also talking 1 inch hail. They just updated the hail risk with this. It was smaller. And as you can see, there's that 70 mile per hour wind report, that little green box just between these warning boxes. So this one's a pretty nasty storm. And then as I zoom out, this will show you, this is what's moving towards the Metroplex. So if you're in Dallas, Fort Worth, eventually if the more northern part of this gets its act together, if you're in Denton, McKinney, if you're in Denton County, Collin County, Dallas County, eastern Parker County, Tarrant County, if you're in Johnson County, and Ellis County, get ready for these storms, because eventually this nasty portion of the line is going to be making its way into the Metroplex, and we could see that northern part of the line eventually strengthen and also transition over to a damaging wind threat. So Dallas, Fort Worth, get your lawn items ready if you have something outdoors that can be easily blown around by the wind. Especially because we're going to see, if we're going to see these 70 mile per hour winds continue. This one's a very nasty storm, and I also want to take a look. If you hear that sound in the background, that is our weather information desk or our weather wire. We're getting the latest information coming in through that. So as we continue, there's a bunch of reports. Let's see what this one is. Okay, so this one's for Comanche County. This one's more the southern part of the storm, and this is for 60 mile per hour winds and 1 inch hail. So I'll zoom out and show you. We'll start to see this eventually load up here, but this one we'll also need to watch. This is our extreme southwestern coverage counties that this is approaching. We don't quite cover a lot of Comanche, but we're going to take a look at this just because this also has a tornado warning associated with it, and it's moving off to the east at 45 miles per hour. So this one's going to stay just south of our coverage area for now, but eventually it's going to be making its way closer to the Meridian area, Hico, Walnut Springs, and Hillsborough. So like I said just a little bit ago, we're going to start to see this line eventually strengthen to severe levels, and I think it's just a matter of time before the northern segment potentially becomes severe as well, just because we're starting to see some strong winds with that. Let's take a look at, it may not be that good of a look. Yeah, I kind of figured that this would be what this looks like. This is our terminal Doppler radar. The airports in DFW have these. There's two of them. There's one for Love Field and there's one for DFW International. And these only have about a 60-mile radius or so. So we're not quite in the region for those two, or actually less than 60. They're not quite in that region to get a good enough view. Some good news, it looks like that hail core might be kind of toning down a bit with the storm in Parker County, but I tell you what, these winds are very significant. I'm going to look behind the scenes at another tool that we have that's not on radar, and let's go to the winds. I'm going to go ahead and sample these just because that is some fairly concerning winds. When we start to see those darker blues, that's when we're approaching just above 70 miles per hour. So I'm going to sample here. Yeah, it looks like we're getting 75 mile per hour winds just north of Weatherford. If you're in downtown Weatherford, you're about to get some nasty winds. So if you're in a mobile home, make sure that you get to shelter, just because these are strong enough winds that they could topple a mobile home if they're getting to 70, 75, maybe even some higher gusts than that. Also, make sure that you're seeking shelter indoors and away from windows, just because these are quite strong winds. So let's take a look at that hail core too. And like I said, it looked like it was toning down a bit, and that looks to be the case, because take a look at the last scan when we had more of that widespread pink and white colors on the radar. That was indicative of a strong hail core. Now it's a little bit more isolated to the Salesville area just to the east. So there's still probably going to be some nickel-sized hail or smaller with this, if I'm going to be betting. So just to give a heads up, there's still going to be some hail with this, but it's not quite as intense as it was just a little bit ago. Even up in Decatur, there might be some penny to nickel-sized hail off and on with this storm. So let's zoom out. And interestingly enough, it looks like there's an outflow boundary forming ahead of this. And if that's the case, that might weaken just a little bit of the line, but that gives me concern for what's ahead of this, because the outflow boundary might trigger some thunderstorms in a fairly considerable environment just ahead of these. So we're going to need to watch that outflow boundary that's developing from Decatur all the way down to Stephenville. This might be a triggering mechanism for additional development down the line if it gets a fair amount ahead of this. So we're going to need to be watching that. I am still keeping a close eye on the radar. Basically, along I-35 and to the east, if we get any sort of isolated, discrete development, that would continue to have more of that large damaging hail threat. If it's off by itself, it would also have that potential tornado risk there. All right, so that report was for the Lamar County storm. And we weren't live with that earlier, but that storm that is just to the north of Paris, that is the one that was in Denton County, went up through Sherman. It basically moved north and then moved more to the east, and it's been skirting the entire Red River as it's making its way further into Oklahoma. It's basically a quarter of that storm is still on the North Texas side, but they're still issuing warnings for that, and that is a very significant storm. That one has had a history of 2-inch hail and 60-mile-per-hour winds with it for quite some time. So I tell you, this system is going crazy with just updating stuff. A bunch of these are not storm reports more than they are just cancellations of portions of the warning. That one was an update from the National Weather Service in Fort Worth saying, heads up to the DFW Metroplex, the strongest storm with 70-mile-per-hour winds is expected to track into the Metroplex between 6 and 7 o'clock. So, yeah, and I agree. There's probably about 45 minutes before it makes its way closer into Tarrant County. So about 30-45 minutes is what we've got going on there. So sorry if this is all over the place. We've got a lot going on. We have a bunch of reports coming in, mostly of gusty winds from this storm. We've had some quarter-sized hail reports with this off and on through the Palo Pinto area just a short time ago. Right between Parker and Palo Pinto counties, we had a 70-mile-per-hour wind gust at times, so we're watching this. Eventually down the line, like I said, we'll be watching for any sort of discrete activity, especially if we get that outflow boundary beginning to trigger any sort of thunderstorm development ahead of it. But other than that, we don't have any sort of discrete activity at the moment, but we do have this fairly nasty line of storms making its way closer into the Metroplex. And I'm gonna take a look at those winds one more time and zoom in. And yeah, Weatherford is just getting hammered by intense winds at the moment. Let's sample a few. And actually, we're getting closer to the radar site, and I'm sampling winds of almost 80 miles an hour. So this storm is very significant. If that is the case, I'm actually going to go to a different velocity product behind the scenes here. See if I could sample some. We're sampling in some areas closer to 80 to 85 mile per hour winds. So I'm curious if the Weather Service decides to mention anything about that. That also could be just a sloppy signal just because we have some interference occurring. But some of these areas we're sampling at least 70 plus, and the 70 would be verified just because we've had reports of that. But we need to be watching just to make sure. In fact, I'll have to look real quick. That actually might be some non-uniform beam filling occurring just ahead of it where we see that green, but it is kind of aligning up with the reflectivity, so that might be wind or it might be some non-uniform beam filling. And what that is basically it's a bad reading from the radar, which honestly wouldn't surprise me. We've had a couple of really bad scans off and on at times throughout the day. So let's move up to the north. Let's show you, kind of bounce back and forth between products. Yeah, and that hail core that was to the north, basically pea to maybe penny-sized hail is still possible. That hail core making its way to Weatherford is also decreasing very quickly. So we're talking penny to still nickel-sized hail, but I'm guessing by the next scan this might be pretty much penny-sized hail or smaller, just because we're starting to see that decrease. Let's see what that report was. Grayson County, reports of thunderstorm wind damage to sheet metal roofs and carports in Tioga. So that was from earlier when we had that pretty significant storm in Grayson County that had all that damaging wind and large hail with it. It looks like there's some weather-related wind damage up to the north. So new report coming in. That is for the storm that is well outside of our coverage area. All right, folks. So there's not a whole lot going on. We are watching all of the streams right now that we have up. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Now we'll be checking to see if anyone has any sort of comments or whatever. But we're going to quickly send out a little push notification to the app just because we want people to know as these storms approach the Metroplex that we're doing live coverage. So bear with me real quick. So we will send this out real quick. Let me actually make sure that we had an issue with our stream earlier, so let me make sure that the app still is connected to the right one. Make sure that we had an issue. Okay, so that's still going on the app. Great. So we'll come back to this real quick. And we'll check out. Sorry if there's not a whole lot to say right now. We've covered this severe thunderstorm warning. We're going to keep going with this, but at the moment, we're getting just a bunch of cancellations and reports outside of our coverage area, so we're not quite seeing a whole lot go on in our area. I am curious if the northern part of this strengthens any, because we've seen times where it looks like there's some impressive winds. Let's see what that report is. Parker County reports of 0.75 inch dime-sized hail near Peaster. So we've got that. So that goes with what we said just a second ago. We said we were thinking nickel-sized hail might be occurring with that one in Parker County, and that looks to be the case. Severe thunderstorm warning now for Denton County. So there's that northern storm that I mentioned, that northern part. It's strengthened, and now we're going to get that start to populate here in a second on the map. But it looks like that is for both Wise and Denton County. So just a quick heads up, Wise and Denton County, we're going to get this alert plotting here in just a second. We're going to send out a little push notification to the app too. So like we said, we're going to be focused on the app alerts, just because I'm the only one here. Let's see. And let's see when that actually expires. 6:30. So this expires at 6:30 p.m. It is for Wise and Denton counties. And it looks like they may have canceled. No, I guess that one still to the south is, I think that one to the south is still going. All right, so now that that's sent out, we will come back to this. We will investigate that storm here as well. We're getting some big raindrops where we're at. So we got that sent out. We're going to check. I'm also looking behind the scenes. It's not on the screen. This is a different computer that we're using. Trying to sample just some things with this. And if you're just now tuning in, thank you for tuning in. We have storms approaching the Metroplex. If you're wondering what's going on, if you're wondering what's up, storms are approaching DFW. We have quite a bit of wind with these. So this transition from more of that supercell concern like we saw earlier with that large hail to now we're transitioning over to pretty much a damaging wind event that we're going to be watching very carefully. We've already seen reports of 60, 70, even 72 mile per hour winds at times. And we're also keeping a close eye for the potential for maybe even a spin-up QLCS tornado risk with some of these too. But right now, I'm not seeing an immediate tornado threat with any of these. But with a QLCS type risk, then you're going to have to be watching very carefully because those can come up fast. But at the moment, I don't see any sort of concern for potential QLCS. Now that I'm sampling that storm in Parker County, I do think that earlier when we were seeing some of those higher than 80, that was non-uniform beam filling with the radar that we were looking at. So, all right, so let's zoom in and sample some of these areas. There's a little strong pocket of winds to the north. That's closer to 65. So truthfully, this is probably about 60 to 65 mile per hour winds occurring just to the north. If anyone's wondering if this is a hail threat, right now this is transitioning to more of a damaging wind and, like I said, QLCS tornado risk. We had 1-inch hail back near Mineral Wells, but the hail cores have decreased significantly. So we've seen that go from 1 inch to about nickel sized, and I'm thinking it's closer to penny sized and not that significant. So let's see. Just another public report of nickel sized hail with that. So let's zoom out. If you're wondering what's going on in the Metroplex, we have one warning that does include the metro area. It does not include Dallas or Fort Worth, but it does include Denton County, and that is for the risk of 60, even maybe 65 mile per hour winds, and even some nickel sized hail. But at the moment, like I said, this isn't a hail risk per se, but this is going to be definitely a damaging wind risk with this. So we've got that going on here. I'm going to actually go back to this, and we'll show you those hail cores really are not that impressive anymore. So like I said, not really a damaging hail threat with this. In fact, there may not be hail much larger than pennies at this point. I think really that hail risk is pretty much almost over with this storm unless it re-strengthens. But at the moment, the hail core is basically non-existent in several places. The biggest hail core right now is located just to the north of Weatherford. So public report, non-thunderstorm damage from wind near Millsap. Part of the roof was lost. So I'm curious about that one, since a roof was blown off and it was labeled as a non-thunderstorm related damage event. So we've got that. That was in Millsap just a second ago. Alright, also just kind of scouring our Twitter page real quick and seeing if anyone has any sort of photos of these. Make sure that if you have any photos that you'd like to share, that you either DM us or you tag us in your posts and use hashtag WN225WX. That's the hashtag that we use on all of our posts, and we will relay any sort of report to the National Weather Service to help them out. And that one was Denton County and Wise County. Now that we don't have a whole lot going on, I'm going to take a second just to post this warning to our social media. All right, folks, so thank you for tuning in. We know that there's a lot going on. If you have any sort of questions, feel free to leave those in the comment section of either our Facebook or our YouTube Live. Thank you also for tuning in on the Live Weather app. So we've got viewers all across. We've got viewers across several platforms right now. If you're just now tuning in, we're going to tell you the reason that we are live right now is because we have a line of storms that's moving into the area, and this is going to pose a damaging wind threat. So we've seen already reports of 70 mile per hour winds. In fact, there we go. New severe thunderstorm warning for Tarrant County, and that is for destructive winds. National Weather Service is saying this has a destructive wind tag with it, so this is very concerning. We were sampling those 80 mile per hour winds here just a little bit ago, and in fact the National Weather Service is agreeing with us, and they have issued a new severe thunderstorm warning with a destructive tag just because we're seeing 80 mile per hour winds. So we're going to actually put that on the app real quick, so bear with me. I apologize for that. Tarrant County. And I do believe that this warning goes until 6:30 just as well. All right, so that's sent out. So let's take a look closer real quick. Fire station lost part of its roof in Millsap. I'm curious why that was reported as non-thunderstorm winds, just because that was in the area that we saw those destructive winds just a second ago. Right now, if you are in Willow Park, Aneta, and Aledo, that right there, that is 85 mile per hour winds, very close to the radar site. And I do believe that this is moving into the downtown Fort Worth area. So one of our viewers just asked, one of our viewers named Tammy asked, any reports of significant threats in Fort Worth currently? Right now, we don't have any sort of reports that the wind is in Fort Worth, but I guarantee that we're going to start to see these shortly. So if you're in the Fort Worth area, Arlington, Everman, Lakeside, North Richland Hills, Keller, even Grapevine, these winds are going to be making their way into the county probably over the next 30 minutes or so, and these are fairly significant. The Weather Service issued, like we said, a destructive tag, and the reason that it's labeled as destructive is because it's 80 mile per hour winds. And just to put that into perspective, that is basically a big wall of winds that are equal to an EF1, an EF0 to EF1 strength tornado. So if you're just now tuning in, we're not saying there is a tornado, but we're saying that the winds that are occurring with this are equal to that of a weaker tornado. So we're talking 80 mile per hour winds, and some samplings closer to the Aneta and Aledo area are hinting at potentially 85 mile per hour winds are occurring with this storm. So destructive winds are moving into the Metroplex, and we just want you to be aware that there is potentially destructive winds moving into the Metroplex, specifically on the western sides of Tarrant County. So just a quick heads up to areas like Lake Worth, White Settlement, Benbrook, Saginaw, Haltom City, downtown Fort Worth, Forest Hill, Dalworthington Gardens. We have all these communities that are in the path of this potentially destructive winds of 70 to 80 miles per hour. So make sure that you are staying tuned to the weather and that you are watching these as they make their way into the Metroplex. And it looks like we're going to start seeing the southern parts of this line becoming warned as well. So we'll get to that in just a second, but I'll zoom out. Those destructive winds look to be on the way into downtown Fort Worth here in just a second. So we've got these destructive winds moving in, and the warning expires at 6:30, I believe. So we've got this going on, destructive winds potentially moving into downtown Fort Worth. Haven't really seen a report of 80, but I'm going to go ahead and just believe that that is what's occurring, just because we've already seen 70 to 72 mile per hour winds with this, and the presentation looks a little bit more impressive than when we had those winds earlier. We're also taking into consideration, do you see that area on the radar that's a donut hole next to the community of Crowley? That is the radar itself in Fort Worth. So we're very close to this, and this is just, I believe, this is just barely 800 feet off the ground. So this is fairly close to the surface level. So I believe that we're going to get a pretty good read at this. So just quickly, we're going to go further to the south. Okay, and the National Weather Service just brought up a good point. There potentially are tornado sirens going off in Tarrant County at the moment. So if you hear tornado sirens in Tarrant County, Fort Worth, these are not for a tornado warning, but these are for a destructive wind threat. One of the biggest misconceptions with outdoor warning sirens is that people believe that they are just for tornadoes. They are not. They are issued for typically large damaging hail above 2 inches if it poses a a big threat to life and property, and they do it for damaging or destructive winds. It's really up to the discretion of the local emergency management whether they sound them at all or what they sound them for. So if you hear sirens going off in Tarrant County, it is because we have 80-mile-per-hour winds moving into the Tarrant County area, specifically at the moment, western Tarrant County, approaching downtown Fort Worth. New severe thunderstorm warning, that's the one to the south. We'll zoom out real quick and just give a brief overview, just because this doesn't look as impressive as the one that's moving into Tarrant County, but this one is in effect until 6:45 for Somerville, Erath, and Hood counties, and we're going to post that real quick. And that is until 6:45 p.m. So we've got that going on. Okay, someone tagged us in. Okay, that's a meme. And a new. Okay, so that is a update from the Storm Prediction Center about a new tornado watch in Arkansas. So that's not for us. So let's move back up to the north. We don't want to overlook everyone. We have a long line of storms. At this point, if we're not zoomed in on your area, it's because there's not a significant risk. And we're seeing video. Downtown Fort Worth is sounding its outdoor warning sirens. So we've got sirens sounding in the community of Fort Worth at the moment. Again, if you're just now tuning in, it's not because there's a tornado in Fort Worth, but there is 80-mile-per-hour winds occurring with this storm. So the emergency management just wants people to know that there are destructive winds. And we know that tornadoes are generally scarier just because you see the damage and stuff like that. But when you have a widespread area of winds of 80, think of equally strong winds to a smaller tornado, except in a impacting more of an area than an isolated area. So when you have 80-mile-per-hour winds, that's fairly destructive. That can lead to roof damage, window damage, tree damage, you name it, power lines snapped, and stuff like that. So when we have that occurring, we need to be watching that because, again, you know, it's significant enough that it could cause some pretty good damage. And right now, that's moving into downtown Fort Worth. We're going to post that on our social media that Fort Worth is sounding those sirens, just because we're starting to see those videos, just to let people know. So bear with me real quick. Okay, so Fort Worth is sounding its sirens, not because of a tornado risk, but because 80-mile-per-hour winds are approaching town. So we posted that out there on our Twitter real quick. So thank you all who are just now tuning in. If you're just now wondering, because we just saw there's an influx in viewers. If you're just now tuning in and you're wondering what's going on, we have some destructive winds moving into the community of Fort Worth, and we're talking close to 80-mile-per-hour winds are occurring. So if you're hearing sirens outdoors right now, it's not because of a tornado risk. It is because that there's some pretty significant damaging winds moving into the community of Fort Worth. So if you're hearing sirens right now in Lakeside, Azle, Fort Worth, North Richland Hills, Benbrook, it's because, excuse me, the radar is indicating just about 80 or 800 feet off the ground that there is 80 to potentially 85-mile-per-hour winds occurring moving into Benbrook. So right now, those winds, they're going to be crossing right here at 820, just to the north of Benbrook, and then they're basically just riding along Highway 30 and Highway 20. And right now, the most significant winds look to be pretty much sandwiched between Highway 30 and I-20. So these winds are approaching downtown Fort Worth. So if you heard your tornado sirens going off, like I said a second ago, if you're just now tuning in and you didn't hear, there's a misconception that outdoor sirens are just for tornadoes. They are issued not by the National Weather Service to sound, but up to local emergency management, and they will go ahead and sound the sirens whenever there is a threat to life or property outdoors, and that's either a tornado, winds, or hail. So if you're hearing these sirens, it's because the emergency management is concerned about this damaging wind threat of 80 to potentially 85 mile per hour winds making its way closer into the Fort Worth area. So right now we're scanning just a more elevated scan on the radar just to see what the winds are doing aloft. So these storms are moving into Fort Worth, and we're giving Fort Worth about 30 minutes before it. Actually, we're going to give it about 20 minutes before this makes its way into Fort Worth. Just real quick, we know we have those destructive winds, but we want to move to the north and just give anyone who's up here who might be wondering, my area is warned, what's going on? I'm in Denton. We'll show you what's going on. There's still some pockets of some pretty strong winds, so it's my guess that 65 to maybe 70 mile per hour winds are possible with this line segment making its way into Denton. The winds that would be the strongest right now are located over Ponder, Crum, Sanger, and moving into Justin. You've got about 15 to 20 minutes before the wind makes its way into your area, and Denton, Corinth, Roanoke, Louisville, and Aubrey. So we've got a lot going on here, and we're going to go quickly to the southern segment of these. And notice how they're not that bright in color. We're seeing some potentially damaging winds with this segment of the storm, but right now it doesn't look like these areas are seeing as significant winds as what's moving into the Fort Worth area. So I'm going to take a look at those reports coming in. If you hear that little chime, that is from reports coming in. Ham radio operator indicates a 68 mile per hour wind at I-30 on the Tarrant and Parker County line. So right now we're seeing those winds right around 70 miles an hour, and we'll start to see that report coming in here in just a second. But right where we're seeing those darker purple and blue colors right here that we were watching just a second ago, there is a spotter down there, or ham radio operator, who measured a 68 mile per hour wind on the county line. So we have that report coming in. Okay, and and I thought they'd do that. So if you're tuning in earlier and we had that report and I really wasn't sure what they meant by a non-thunderstorm related wind, they corrected that. That was from the damaging winds. Kind of like I was thinking, because if you're tuning in with us, we saw that those winds were over the area where the damage occurred. So it really didn't make any sense that it wasn't thunderstorm related. So correction to that just came in on the wire. And then obviously that wind risk. The National Weather Service highlighted basically all of Dallas and Tarrant County with a new update. They said the wind threat is ramping up with a squall line. Areas in the highlighted area, which is not shown, but it includes all of Dallas and Tarrant County, or Dallas and Tarrant, excuse me, are at risk for 80 plus mile per hour winds and brief embedded spin-ups. So also, if you're tuning in earlier, I mentioned we thought that this was going to be a potential spin-up risk for tornadoes as this made its way into more of a favorable environment. And it looks like the National Weather Service is also saying that too. So we're going to have to be watching. Once these storms make their way east, we're going to start to see potentially the risk for a spin-up tornado or two. We have a new report that just came in 1 mile to the northwest of Westworth in Tarrant County. An amateur radio operator reported a 70 mile per hour measured wind at northwestern Fort Worth. So we're still seeing those verified reports coming in. Significant winds moving into Tarrant County, folks. If I'm in Fort Worth, I would be on the lowest floor of a sturdy building and away from doors and windows, just because these winds are very, very strong. So stay away from doors and windows and just wait until the storm has passed. In fact, I think I also want to check out and see if we still, and it looks like the lightning tool is not working, but I believe that there is also quite a bit of lightning occurring with this as well. So what we've got going on here, actually before I get to that, let's go to the TDAL radar, and this is the terminal radar that we mentioned earlier. Denton, Texas, a 68-mile-per-hour wind was reported at one of the local airports up there. So that was about 67.9. We're going to go ahead and say closer. Between 65 and 68-mile-per-hour winds are likely occurring with that storm. So Denton County, you're also getting some strong winds. What we're looking at here is the terminal Doppler radar from, it is the Dallas Love Field radar. And we're not getting that good of a view with this one, so let's go and look at the DFW Airport one. And actually, now I see this, let's go back to the Fort Worth site, and let's take a look at that new area near Justin. And it looks like there's another pocket of some fairly significant winds moving into the Justin area at this moment in time. Radar's indicating 68 to about 75, and that wouldn't surprise me since we've already seen that report of about 68 miles per hour winds up there in Denton County here just a short time ago. So let's move back into Dallas County. Again, if you're just now tuning in Fort Worth and you're wondering why are my sirens going off, again, it's not because of a tornado risk. We have destructive winds of 70 already occurring in Fort Worth with some gusts of up to 80 possible as well. 80 to 85 I would estimate just based off what the radar's saying, and we are looking just barely about 500 feet off the ground at this point. So downtown Fort Worth, go ahead and just get inside and stay away from doors and windows just because the 70 to 80 mile per hour winds are making their way into the area. Zooming to the north, Sanger, Crum, Ponder, North Lake Justin, you're also getting potentially 70 mile per hour winds with this squall line of storms. Go ahead and seek shelter inside. If you're at UNT, if you're at Denton, if you're at New Hope, Aubrey, Pilot Point, Corinth, Highland Village, Roanoke, Louisville, Argyle, go ahead and get ready to move indoors if you're outdoors just because these winds are also on the way. In fact, the winds are moving into Denton at this time, even closer to the UNT area. We've seen some estimated winds of 60 to 68 at times with this storm. So just stay indoors and away from windows and wait until the storm has passed. So let's move back to the south, back into Tarrant County. And if we're not talking about your area, that's some good news because that means that it is not of significant of a risk. So right now, the destructive winds still, we're talking 80 still sampling. In fact, there's some areas that are indicating 86. So that's what the radar is looking at aloft. That may not be fully translating back to the surface, but there's some very concerning winds moving into Fort Worth at this point in time. So if you're in Fort Worth, like I said, just make sure that you are moving almost like shelter, just in the center of your house, just away from windows, just because the winds are going to be very, very loud and they're going to be very, very strong. Someone reported hail and Ponder. Let's actually go back up and look. Yeah, and there's a little pink area on the radar, so that would indicate, yeah, there's a little bit of a hail core with that. Allison, if you're still on, you said hail and Ponder. Could you let us know if that was small? It looks like on radar we were saying about nickel-sized. I wouldn't go outdoors to check, but if you can just, if you're seeing it and it looks smaller, the reports would be appreciated. So thank you for the report already. There's a bunch of tornado warnings just to our east, so it's some good news that we don't have. And for anyone who wants to report anything, make sure that you only do so if you can do so safely. Don't go out in the middle of a storm to get something and take a picture. Wait until the storm has passed or if you can see it and it's safe. So we have a bunch of tornado warnings. We'll move out here just real quick and show you what I'm mentioning. Just a bunch of tornado warnings from Shreveport, Texarkana, all the way into Idabel. and Broken Bow. So we've got all these going on. Okay, and now we are getting some more alarming reports from the Fort Worth area, as a 80 mile per hour wind or so just came in from one of the stations, it looks like. Fort Worth Meckham reported a 78 mile per hour wind, and that's going to populate here on the radar in just a second. Denton County official National Weather Service observer recorded a 70 mile per hour winds at the Denton Enterprise Airport. So 70 mile per hour winds in Denton too. Okay, and they just issued. I was wondering what that was. It looks like they issued just a separate severe thunderstorm warning for that part of the winds that are in Justin and Argyle for destructive 80 plus mile per hour winds there. So we've got that going on. And I tell you what, this is a very, very active afternoon. Unfortunately, these are all 70 to 80 mile per hour winds. Damage threat considerable was just issued for a severe thunderstorm warning in Johnson County. So all of these are basically getting tagged for considerable damage. 70 mile per hour wind was reported. We're just getting reports flooding in. That was in Denton, Texas. So that was in Denton. Just one report after another. So we've got that going on. We have this storm that just went for Johnson County. I'm going to go ahead and just report that real quick. That's until 7:15. It is a very, very active afternoon here in the Weather 225 Storm Studios. Just running and gunning. Johnson. And that one is until 7:30, and that is for the risk of 70 miles an hour, 70 mile per hour winds. Or 7:15, excuse me. So that was 7:15 for that southern storm. So like we said just a second ago, if you're in Fort Worth, go ahead and just hunker down away from windows, just because we're starting to see more of these winds of 65, 70, even 80 showing up on the radar. And even in some of the reports, we've seen a 78 mile per hour wind so far. So we've got a lot going on. In fact, I'm actually going to put a little notification out. Alright, so we're going to send this out real quick, just to let people know with the app that there's some destructive winds moving into Fort Worth, in case someone was not aware. So let's zoom in real quick. I'm going to sample behind the scenes. Fortunately, at this point in time, we haven't seen an increase in winds. We're still seeing those 80 mile per hour winds in some spots. Sampling this, we're also getting those 65 mile per hour winds. As of this time, the reports have officially been closer to 78, but that doesn't matter. That's still a very destructive wind with this. And we're checking a different tool here. Let's go back to reflectivity, and let's also go to the TDAL site, just because right now these storms are just about on top of him, or on top of this radar. And try and see if we can get a better view of this one up here to the north. And this, yeah, the TDAL site is also showing just barely just above the surface, about 80 mile per hour winds. So that's probably translating closer to about 72 to 75, maybe even closer to 80 near the Double Oak, Flower Mound, and Highland Village community, closer to Lake Dallas there as well. So we're watching 2 areas with destructive winds. Both are in the Metroplex, unfortunately. So we're still keeping a very close eye on this storm. Fort Worth Meckham Airport reported a 77 mile per hour wind again. All right, so just taking a little break there to just get a sip of water real quick. And then I'm also looking through, we want to give you the best information possible. We're also looking at any reports to see if anyone's actually seen anything wind damage wise so far. It's still dangerous to go out ahead of this, so don't get out and try and look at this. If you're in Fort Worth, just stay indoors and wait till it's passed, because we just want you to be completely safe. But yeah, it looks like ham radio reporters and amateur radio operators are reporting most of these. So let's go to, let's look at the hail core tracker real quick, just for anyone who's wondering if they see, and let's see what that is. Okay, so new severe thunderstorm warning, damage threat considerable, and this is for, I believe, is it just Denton County or is it also for Collin County? Okay, that one is just for Denton County, so new warning. They're going to go ahead and, I guess, cancel the portion of the storm in Wise County, kind of like what they just did, dropping the Parker County part. And we've got that coming in. 65 mile per hour wind was reported near downtown Fort Worth just a short time ago. That just plotted up on the radar there as well. Haltom City reported a wind gust of 70 at 5:55, measured at the National Weather Service office. So the National Weather Service office that's located in Fort Worth is getting about 70 mile per hour winds as of roughly 10 minutes ago. So we've got quite a bit. And thank you for those who are on the stream, who just recently followed. Feel free to share this if you know anyone in the area who needs to be alert of this. So sharing this post will definitely help reach as many people in the Metroplex as possible, so that we can let them know, especially because we're still seeing these quite significant winds moving into Tarrant County, if you know anyone in this area. So let's see what that was. It's just another smaller hail report. So right now the winds themselves are over downtown Fort Worth, and we're looking about 500 feet up. And some of the areas that we're sampling, we're just going to go ahead and say between 65 and roughly 80. Severe thunderstorm warning for Bosque County. That is well to the south and west. That is just slightly outside of our coverage county, or our coverage county area. So several reports coming in. New 77 mile per hour wind once again at the Meckham Fort Worth regional. Wow. So just down the line, North Richland Hills is starting to get the winds. If you're in Euless, Colleyville, Minster's Chapel, Grapevine, it's already basically in Keller, Arlington, Darworthington Gardens, Forest Hill, Hearst, Bedford, Colleyville, Euless, you name it. If you're in these communities, get ready because these winds are just about on top of you, and we're still seeing. It's not like this pulsed up real quick and then it died off. We're seeing consistent scans with just about the same strength of wind. So we're watching these storms carefully because they are potentially producing destructive winds of 70 to 80 plus. In fact, a new severe thunderstorm warning was issued for Dallas County and Collin County just now. That'll apply here in just a second. We're going to go ahead and post this to the app just to let viewers know who are not watching that there is destructive winds moving into the DFW Metroplex area of 80 miles an hour. And we'll check real quick and let you know. When this warning expires, and that is until 7:15. Alright, so now that that's sent out on the app, so this is moving into basically the heart of the Metroplex at the moment. We're talking 80 mile per hour winds. It looks like the Weather Service is saying widespread damaging winds are likely from this as it makes its way into Dallas. So if you're in Dallas County and you're hearing the sirens going off, we had this with Fort Worth just a little bit ago. It is not because of a tornado risk. It is because of this destructive wind threat. So if you know anyone in Dallas, if you know anyone in McKinney, Irving, the Carrollton, Allen, Lucas, Nevada, Saxe, Duncanville, Las Colinas, make sure that they know that this storm is coming. This is potentially widespread destructive winds of 80 miles an hour. So go ahead and share this post and just let your friends and family in the area know to either tune in or tune into their preferred outlet because this is very dangerous winds. We're talking 80 miles an hour at times, and that can lead to widespread damage. So they've added a destructive tag to this for the threat of 80 plus mile per hour winds at times. So we're keeping a very close eye on this, but this is a very, very nasty storm with significant winds likely occurring. And the National Weather Service has updated the severe thunderstorm warning for Tarrant County, saying 80 mile per hour winds are likely. And they went ahead and continued that destructive tag. Still seeing reports from some of the local stations of 77 mile an hour winds. So this is very concerning, especially because this is moving into basically the more populated areas of the metro area. We're talking basically the heart of DFW, and our 4 central counties are where we're getting these destructive winds that are moving into. So if you are in the storm's path, get inside, stay away from doors and windows. If you hear sirens, it's because we have these winds moving in, and these are very concerning. So again, make sure that you are indoors and away from windows. This is a very, very dangerous line of storms moving into the area, and it has a history of almost 80 mile per hour winds. So it's not like this isn't confirmed. We've seen several of these reports closer to about 70 to 75, even closer to 78. So these are moving into the area. There's destructive winds in the Louisville area moving in right now. Corinth, Argyle, Highland Village. This is riding pretty much along Highway 35E into Dallas. So we have 2 areas of destructive winds. There's an area to the south that also we're watching for the potential 70-mile-per-hour winds, but it's not as impressive on the radar at the moment. But if you're in Cleburne, you're going to want to be watching this very carefully. At the moment, because of the segment of these storms, it doesn't necessarily look like there is an immediate spin-up tornado threat with anyone who is concerned about that at this point in time. So, watching a million things. And it, let's see. Fort Worth Alliance Airport just reported a 61-mile-per-hour wind gust here just a short time ago. So, and another Fort Worth site reported 69. So we're still seeing between 60 and 70 with a few higher gusts of even up to 80 at times. We're just going to go ahead and see what's going on Twitter real quick. Also going to check the YouTube. We haven't really looked in the comments on that one, so I apologize if anyone has left a question on there. So let's look real quick one more time. And we know there's not a whole lot to look at right now. If you're just now tuning in, or if you've been watching for a while and these storms haven't made them their way to you yet, you might be wondering, why are we just sticking to these? We have a bunch of severe thunderstorm warnings that basically extend all the way down into the San Antonio area with this squall line of storms. Right now, the strongest section is in the heart of the Metroplex between Denton, Collin, Dallas, and Tarrant County. That's currently in more of Tarrant and Denton County. And as I say that, it actually looks like there's a new little hail core trying to go up to the north near Aubrey Pilot Point and New Hope. So if you're in those areas, get ready for maybe some nickel-sized hail. It's not quite at severe levels as it looks right now, but the main threat right now is the damaging wind threat. We're also watching, there's a little bit of convection, if we put this into motion, kind of firing out ahead of these line of storms. So for our eastern counties, if we get any sort of discrete activity that develops, that's when we would be watching for the development of those supercells capable of large damaging hail. But right now, we don't have any sort of distinct activity that has occurred with that. We're dealing mostly with the squall line situation. So right now, the winds are over downtown Fort Worth still, Forest Hill, and they're continuing. So basically from Benbrook, Forest Hill, Fort Worth, just north of Crowley, Keller, North Richland Hills, Euless, Arlington, you name it. That's when we're talking those damaging winds are moving into the area. Moving up to the north into Louisville, Highland Village, Corinth, Argyle, South Denton. That's when we're talking the 80-mile-per-hour winds potentially with those storms too. So there's a lot of activity going on that we're watching. And in fact, now that we're seeing those reds showing up, and this storm is just on top of the TDAL radar site, let's take a look here. Heads up to the community of Grapevine. This radar is looking just 100 feet off the ground, and it's showing 80-mile-per-hour winds. So Capel, Grapevine, and Southlake, I'm going to go ahead and say 80-mile-per-hour winds are probably occurring near Grapevine right now. So destructive winds are currently or likely in the Grapevine area. But we're also watching this little area down to the south here for also an area of potentially, let's sample that. That's closer to about 70-mile-per-hour winds just to the north of Arlington. And a bunch of reports just coming in at the same time, folks. So we got that. Measured 80-mile-per-hour winds at Tarrant Parkway and Riverside Drive in North Fort Worth. So there we go, folks. We got the 80-mile-per-hour winds confirmed in downtown Fort Worth, or at least the north side of downtown Fort Worth. And there's that report. Oh, actually, that looks more like between Watauga, Saginaw, North Fort Worth. So right now, not a whole lot to kind of discuss. There's no immediate tornado threat with any of these, but we are watching this line of storms very carefully just because there's been some destructive winds. Alright folks, so just behind the scenes, trying to look over some reports, trying to see if there's any sort of video to look at, if there's like a chaser in the area to see what they're seeing, just because I'm not in Fort Worth. But it does look like, let's zoom back in here real quick. Also seen some family members are sending a video. So it looks like we got some scud clouds ahead of this. Now, sorry if I'm all over the place. We're trying to kind of look and see just what all's going on. There's a lot of things between the social media. We're trying to navigate the app. Sirens are sounding in Richardson. Thank you for the report, Craig. So if you are just now tuning in and you're from Dallas and Collin County, the sirens are not going off for any sort of tornado threat at this time. They're going off for a very significant wind threat. 80-mile-per-hour winds have been occurring in Tarrant County, and they're making their way into Dallas County. Christopher, we don't have any sort of big hail threat with this at the moment. The closest hail risk is going to be in Aubrey and Pilot Point, but that's nickel-sized hail. Right now we're dealing with a destructive wind threat of 80 miles an hour, and as you can see, most of the reports have been consistently 70 to 65 to even 80. So these winds are moving into the Dallas County area here shortly, so heads up to if you are in basically Minster's Chapel, Euless, Grapevine, Capel, Farmers Branch, Irving, and Las Colinas. These winds are going to get fairly nasty here in just a little bit. I want to go back to the TDAL site and just see what it's thinking now that the storm has gotten even closer to the area that it is in, and still seeing those potentially destructive winds just about 80 to 100 feet off the ground near the Grapevine area, North Grapevine, Capel. So there could be some damaging winds there. Also in the Louisville area, we're seeing some samplings of 70-mile-per-hour winds, and that's in this little destructive severe thunderstorm warning box that we've got going on there too. So we've got this going on up to the north. We have this storm moving into downtown Fort Worth, eventually making its way into the heart of DFW, closer to DFW Airport here in just a little bit. That has confirmation of 80-mile-per-hour winds at times with this. So, I think this is the first time that we haven't heard the little chime over and over and over so far tonight. Which, of course, jinxed it. There it is. So, 66.8 miles an hour winds were just reported at DFW Airport. 65 to 66 mile per hour winds reported at the airport. So there's some strong winds even ahead of the main ball of significant winds. So we're seeing 65, and in fact that correlates with what we saw here just a second ago with the TDAL radar when we saw, we'll zoom in, those destructive winds. So if we're seeing 65 at the airport just to the north, it wouldn't surprise me if right now Capel is getting about 60 to 70 mile an hour winds right now. Same with North Grapevine. So destructive winds there occurring, and then destructive winds here in Tarrant County. I'll zoom in real quick and show you downtown Fort Worth, still seeing all those winds moving in. I'll zoom out just a little bit so you can see the mixture of the two storms. Let's go back to reflectivity real quick. And just to the west, so this is near Greenville. This is kind of what I'm talking about with that discrete activity that fires up ahead. We have a little bit of convection well out ahead of these. If we see these start to kind of strengthen quickly, this would be the concern for the damaging wind threat. So we have a new report that just came in. The community of Las Colinas, just near Capel. I'm not quite sure if Capel is, but Las Colinas is sounding their outdoor warning sirens at this time, and it is for the destructive winds. So right now we have these destructive winds moving into the area, and sirens are sounding in the Irving and Las Colinas area. There's a new report that just came in. 57-mile-per-hour winds in Denton. So yeah, if you are in Irving, Dallas, if you're hearing these sirens sound, it's because we're still seeing these destructive winds occurring and moving in. We had a 65-mile-per-hour wind here just a short time ago at the airport. We're continuing to see power outage in Hertz, or Hearst, excuse me. Okay, so thank you for that report. So there's some power outages with these, and that's not to be unexpected, just because 80-mile-per-hour winds, that could easily topple a power pole and even some trees, or knock over a tree limb onto a transformer box. So again, some significant winds still occurring. Let me post this. There's quite a bit of lightning where I'm at, so if you hear the rumbles in the background, that is indeed thunder. So we posted this to our social media. We're just getting the live stream out there. Dallas, Fort Worth, the DFW airport just reported a 66-mile-per-hour wind. So that is just 1 mile over what the previous report was just a short time ago. So again, if you're in Las Colinas, Irving, Grapevine, Capel, these winds are moving into your area here shortly too. So we've already seen 66-mile-per-hour winds with this. It is, again, a fairly concerning windstorm moving into the area. So make sure that you are inside and away from windows. And we do have some reports that sirens have been sounding in the Irving and Las Colinas area. I'm not quite sure for Capel or Grapevine, but we've seen sirens sounding there, or at least received reports. So if your area's sounding sirens, feel free to let us know in the comments. We're keeping track of kind of what community is posting that or sounding theirs. Alright, so this is the T-Dow site, and it looks like there is a big area of gusty winds just kind of on the leading edge of this moving into Dallas County, and some of these are sampling closer to about 60 to 70, so potentially we'll start to see these moving into the DFW area, or excuse me, not DFW, the Dallas area here shortly. So heads up to anyone in Dallas. If you have friends or family in the area, tag them in this post so that they see it and they tune in, or just go ahead and share this video just to kind of get as much outreach as possible as these storms, destructive storms, make their way into the area. Severe thunderstorm warning was just issued for another one of the southern counties. I believe that one is outside of our coverage area, though. Yeah, and that's for Gatesville. We don't cover quite that far south. Fort Worth Alliance Airport just a second ago reported a 61-mile-per-hour wind gust. I believe that was about 5 to 10 minutes ago or so. That one doesn't really look to have a clear timing on that, so we'll work with that. Let's go back to the Fort Worth radar site. And again, if you're wondering, is there any sort of tornado threat with these? The answer is, at the moment, no. But if we start to see this line, notice how it's starting to break up into little segments here. If we start to see these break up, that's when we're going to have to be watching for this QLCS tornado risk, especially if we get any segments that go from the northwest to the southeast. That's when it would be more favorable for the potential of a spin up. But right now, it doesn't look like we have that necessarily occurring. All right, so if I'm all over the place, we're looking at a few things here just to make sure and do our due diligence and just see what else is going on. So quick overview real quick. I'm going to take these reports off. I'm going to take the radar sites off, and we'll just show you. If you're just now tuning in and you're wondering what's going on, we have destructive winds. Okay, so never mind that. We have a tornado warning, and it looks like this is a QLCS that's coming up fast. So let's go up to the TDAL site because I believe that this is for the northern storm. We saw a little bit of a spin with that just a second ago, but it looks like there is a tornado warning. Actually, I'm incorrect. It's this one to the south. So we didn't see this one, but we want to do our due diligence and just make sure that you know there's a tornado warning for Dallas County. This does include Dallas proper, so the downtown Dallas area is located, and there's that warning, and it is for a potential tornado that is trying to develop on the leading edge of this. So we have a tornado warning for Dallas County. We're going to go ahead and post this on our app real quick, so bear with us. But this just came up in the last couple of minutes. And this tornado warning goes until 7 o'clock. This thing keeps crashing. So we're going to go ahead and post that out there real quick. So if you're in downtown Dallas, make sure that you are seeking shelter. If you're in Grand Prairie, we'll zoom in. Cockrell Hill, Duncanville, Hutchins, we knew you had some pretty gnarly storms there yesterday. Again, you're going to get this potentially developing tornado moving into your area. Lancaster and Wilmer. So if you are in these areas, South Dallas, if you are right here, make sure that you're seeking shelter. Let's go back to the reflectivity. And we're going to go, I'm trying to look off to the side and see if there's any sort of confirmation with this, but if this is a QLCS tornado, it's just going to develop quickly. So we're going to have to be watching just between scans to see if anything alarming kind of develops out of nowhere. So with a QLCS tornado, you get less of an opportunity to kind of point it out than you would a supercell that's kind of off on its own. And so the difference is this is going to be embedded, so it's going to be probably secluded by rain, so you're not going to see it, but it's definitely going to be let's see, that was a big flash. Had a little, sounded like we had a little power surge from that one just a second ago, so trying to make sure that computer's up and running. Okay, so also posting this out to our social media. Let's see. So again, if you're just now tuning in, we have one tornado warning, and that is for the storm in Dallas County. It looks like they warned it for this segment that's out ahead of it. Let's go to the TDAL site and see if there's something that we're not necessarily seeing. And this one looks to be doing a better job. So there might be a little bit of rotation here near the Cockrell Hill area. So we're also scanning behind the scenes here. Just we have a radar program that is sampling the environment. We're also checking the wind shear with this. It looks like there's a little bit of wind shear just to the southeast of Irving, so there could be a couple of areas with this, and that's not out of the ordinary for a QLCS tornado setup. When you get these, there'll be quick little areas of rotation embedded, and let's see. So the Dallas Zoo, Oak Cliff. So basically, if you're at the Dallas Zoo, Dallas proper, from downtown Dallas, Cockrell Hill, not really sure why it's not loading up, but I know there's an Amazon distribution center down here somewhere, just to the northeast of Cockrell Hill. Downtown Dallas, once again, the zoo. There's Duncanville, several of these communities down here, including the Hutchinson area, Lancaster, Wilmer. Make sure that you're in your tornado safe place, just because these destructive winds are occurring, but also there's probably going to be a spin-up tornado developing just right now. If it were where it looks like it would be located near the Cockrell Hill area. So there could be a few embedded spin-ups along the leading edge of this. But if you were in Dallas, I would be seeking immediate tornado precautions. In fact, this radar looks like there might even be a little spin-up area near the Cockrell Hill area, trying to get its act together. But at this moment in time, it doesn't look like there is any of those alarming radar presentations where it looks like it is a strong tornado or anything like that. But we are definitely seeing, and I think right here on this radar too, you can see there's a little bit of spin area near the Cockrell Hill area. There might even be one closer to downtown too. So there's a couple of areas where it could be. So we're keeping a very close eye on this. Once again, seek shelter now. The Dallas Zoo. Hutchins, Duncanville, Cockrell Hill. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. Trying to get it out to any viewer. So if you know anyone in Dallas, make sure you tag them in this, or just let them know tornado warning for Dallas. They don't have to watch us. Just make sure that they're tuning into somewhere to know that there is a tornado warning for the area, and a spin-up tornado is a possibility. And like I said earlier, when you have a QLCS type tornado, they spin up fast. Sometimes they might be between a couple of scans. It's not like a supercell where you get a distinct location that goes on and on and on. These are usually short-lived. And it looks like Fox 4 News said that the winds were so strong at DFW Airport it actually broke their tower camera off the pole. It looks like the community of Carrollton posted video of sirens going off in their community, and we're going to post that onto our social media. So it looks like they just shortened the warning. It's going to plot up here real quick, but the other source, it just spliced out parts of Dallas County. So still downtown Dallas is included on this, but the radar's starting to pick up with our little TVS icon where it thinks the rotation would be located, and that's kind of in the area where we thought it would be. So let's go back to the TDAL site, since this had a fairly good reading on this just a little bit ago. And right here, I think that this is going to be the main area of circulation, if any, that just crossed Highway 35. And yeah, I do believe that that's where it is. So if you're in Hutchins, I would be in shelter, because this might be a developing QLCS tornado making its way closer to you, if in fact that is the area. Let's go back to the Fort Worth radar site and see if that's also aligned with it. And you know, it's aligned with that one. So I'm going to go ahead and say I do believe that that might be a developing QLCS tornado on the leading edge of this. We'll try and see if we can get some roads in here real quick. Off to the side, I'm going to name off some roads and just see if it's not as distinct on this one. But right now, if the tornado were to be developing, we would be talking right now. It's on East Keast Boulevard. It's just to the north of Ledbetter Drive, and it is located right over Frio Drive East, Arizona Avenue, Overton Road, Garza Avenue, Fordham Road, Brookmere Drive, Ann Arbor Avenue, Elkhorn Trail, Summit Ridge Drive, and it is just to the south of Marza Avenue and South Denley Road, and to the north of Montague Avenue. So those are some roads that the circulation is right now located over. This would be the area that we think is the main area of concern, especially because the warning, it's right in the middle of it. And you can kind of see where we have some greens and reds coming together. So this is where we're watching for that. That's on the leading edge of this storm. So this is where we're watching pretty much at this moment in time. So if I just named off those roads, make sure that you're in shelter now, just because that's where it's located now. And behind the scenes, I'm going to actually do a little storm track here and just name off some times here when I think this is going to be arriving into Hutchinson. So this is moving. That is not the proper. Computer's trying to say this is moving northeast when that is not the case. So let's do this. So Hutchins, this will be there at 6:45, between 6:45 and 6:50. Wilmer, it'll eventually be there around 6:50 to 6:55. Combine, that'll be there around 7 o'clock. And then eventually, if it holds its act together, it'll be making its way to the Oak Grove area around 7:20. So that's what we got going on there. Right now, the DFW airport just reported a 76 mile per hour wind gust just a second ago. So 76 mile per hour wind was just reported at DFW airport. That's up here to the north. And real quick, I'm going to go back to the main view here, and let's zoom out and show you. Basically, downtown Fort Worth is almost in the all clear. We'll give you another little bit to go. Let's go back to the southern storm. That one looks a little bit more concerning, and there's a little segment right down here that looks like maybe that would be the next concerning area for a QLCS spin-up tornado. And oh boy, look at those winds. So we're sampling right now about 60 to 65 with this. So this area of storms near Grandview, Rio Vista, Venice, Alvarado, and Lilan, and Keene and Cleburne. This is between 60 and 65, maybe even 70 mile per hour winds there potentially occurring with this storm. And we'll quickly look at the hail core tracker, and you can tell there's not any sort of hail track with any of these. So now that we've done that, we're going to go back down here. Let's go to the TDAL site and just take a look at the updated scan here with that potential developing QLCS tornado. And you know, from this site, it doesn't look like there is a significant tornadic signature or anything like that. There's definitely rotation still moving towards Hutchins, but this almost looks like just a giant ball of significant winds of 80 miles an hour or so. Let's go back to the Fort Worth site, and still just seeing a big area of wind moving into the area. So if you're in Hutchins, still be in shelter. We still have that warning ongoing. There still could be a tornado trying to develop, or a spin-up tornado that is either occurring or has occurred. So just stay indoors, stay in shelter. If you're not sure where to go in the event of a tornado, it is the lowest floor of a sturdy building, an interior room or hallway. We're talking put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So an interior bathroom or closet is usually preferred. Make sure you cover yourself with pillows and blankets, and just wait until the storm has passed if you're in the path of this potential developing spin-up tornado. So this is our only tornado warning as well. So if you're tuning in, this is our only tornado warning at the moment. We don't have any other tornado warnings or anything like that. This is our own. And we're going to actually, let's go back to this. We're sorry if we're all over the place. We're trying to just check out a bunch of different products with the radar. And new report just came in. Dallas Love Field, that was a 76 mile per hour wind. That is another report that just came in. So Dallas Love Field is getting hammered by some pretty significant winds at this time. So that's occurring. We'll put those reports back on just so you can kind of follow along and see. But right now, the tornado warning, like we said, no immediate significant tornado risk or anything that jumps out to us, but that doesn't mean that something is not occurring. So if you are in, again, the community of Hutchins, Lancaster, or Wilmer, just go ahead and seek shelter and wait till the storm has passed. I'm gonna take a. Sirens are going off in Mesquite. Yeah, and that's probably because Mesquite is so close to this tornado warning that the sirens are going off, but that's also probably because the destructive tag has been continued with this storm that's in Dallas County for 80 mile per hour winds outside of the tornado warning. So if you are in Dallas County, there's two areas. If you're hearing sirens, if you're basically from central into southeastern Dallas County, from Dallas into the southeast, that is because there is this tornado warning in place. And then if you are outside of that and you're hearing sirens go off, that is because 80 mile per hour winds are still possible with this storm making its way through Tarrant, Dallas, parts of Denton, and Collin counties. So we have a myriad of reasons why sirens are going off. Wind gusts of 76 reported at Highland Park, just down the street from Dallas Love Field, and that goes along with that Love Field Airport report we saw here just a second ago. So we have all these warnings ongoing. Most of them are severe thunderstorm. We have one tornado warning within the viewing area. So basically, if you are in a severe thunderstorm warning right now, you are going to see roughly between 65 and 80 mile per hour winds. So we have these winds that are occurring. They're going to be a little bit different than your typical severe thunderstorm warning. That's because these winds are quite destructive of 65, 70 to 80 miles an hour. The other thing that we're watching is the National Weather Service is continuing that tornado warning that's moving to the southeast at 45. A severe squall line capable of producing both tornadoes and extreme straight line winds was located near Hutchins, moving southeast at 45. So, National Weather Service still thinks that spin ups may occur with this. Dallas Executive Airport measured a 63-mile-per-hour wind just a second ago. And then we also had our western counties dropped from the tornado watch. So that'll be plotting here in just a second. That's not quite reached the system, but the western counties, so Jack, Montague, and Young, Eastland, Erath, Hamilton, Hood, Mills, Somerville, Stevens, and Wise counties are now dropped from the tornado watch. And that's the thing. If you're tuning in and you're wondering, when is this all going to end? Severe weather wise, once this line has moved through, your severe weather threat is over. The backside of this is probably still going to have some fairly gusty winds because we have a wind advisory in effect until tomorrow morning, but right now behind this is just rain and thunder, but we have to get through this line of storms first. So we still have this tornado warning for Dallas County, and you can see kind of right here where there's a little bit of a stinger hook, if you will, that is well ahead of the line right here, and you can see it almost looks like a mouth, and that's because inflow is feeding into this. So that is probably why they're continuing this tornado warning, is because there's still an area that they're watching for the potential. So we have that little stinger hook right there. We also have, just off of the reflectivity, let's go over to this one near Duncanville, and let's check. There might be a little bit of spin forming near the Duncanville area where you see that inflow right there just north of Cedar Hill. So we're watching two areas potentially where you start to see these almost little arms just ahead of it, but there's inflow feeding into that one. And then when I look at the velocity, there's just a little bit of a strong wind pocket that might be potentially developing spin up. So let's look at this radar site and see. And this one's probably not going to see that one very well, but still showing Dallas County. And it looks like they just extended that severe thunderstorm warning now to include Kaufman and I believe Rockwall counties here. Let's see. Yeah, so Kaufman, Rockwall, I believe that's Hunt County too. That is in effect until 8 o'clock. So we're going to post this out on the app. Kaufman. And I do believe that warning for those storms, that one ends at 8 o'clock. And that is also for the threat of 80-mile-per-hour winds. So not quite done with these destructive winds, unfortunately. Hopefully we start to see these winds die down, just because these can lead to widespread wind damage, and that's something that we don't want to see. So let's keep an eye on this real quick. Let's go back. Yeah, it's still a little area that we're watching with this one. It's not too impressive, but also we need to watch. I'm a little bit shocked that the radar is not updating more often with this line of storms, especially with this this embedded spin up risk. And there's the new scan, so let's check this real quick. And see, we've still got about 30 seconds with this, but here's the new scan. Still watching that little bit of inflow there in the Duncanville area. Yeah, not really sure why it's updating every 5 minutes if there's a spin up risk. All right, so there's a new scan in there. Right in there. That is where I would think the greatest spin-up potential is still located, just to the east of Hutchins, and that's on Beltline, just to the south of Lawson and south of Balch Springs, approaching Seagoville. So that's what we've got there. I do believe that there still could be a potential spin-up trying to kind of get its act together right over Beltline, just to the east of Hutchins. So right now we'll zoom out real quick. We've been live, I'm not sure for how long. It's been a very busy afternoon, and hopefully we don't see that much damage with this storm. We've seen quite a bit of wind reports. Fortunately, haven't really seen a whole lot of wind damage. Now I'm sure there's going to be damage just because, you know, this has been 80-mile-per-hour winds in some areas, but fortunately haven't seen any reports of significant damage to any areas so far. We had one report of a fire station that had its roof blown off right at the county line between Parker and Palo Pinto counties here earlier. And fortunately, we haven't seen any sort of reports of tornadic-related damage or of a tornado itself with this embedded spin up. We're probably not going to see this tornado. You're probably not going to see this tornado either, just because it is probably embedded and rain wrapped out ahead of this main line. So still keeping a close eye on that. That tornado warning is set to expire here, I believe, in about 5 minutes. Let's see if they extended the time. Yeah, so this tornado warning expires in about 5 minutes. So we'll wait and see what the Weather Service goes ahead and does for this. So just to reiterate, if you're just now tuning in, if you're in a severe thunderstorm warning right now in any of the coverage area, it is because there is a line of destructive 80-mile-per-hour winds extending from up to the Sherman to Bonham area down through McKinney, Dallas, and this line extends all the way down closer to the San Antonio area. So a long line of storms moving into the area. Still seeing this warning. They're not canceling it, but I'm wondering if they're going to let it expire at its time or if they're going to go ahead and continue this. Let's check one more time. You can still see right here, this little brighter shaded area right here is where potentially we would see that risk for a spin up. So we're going to go ahead and see what the Weather Service does with this in about 5 minutes or so. Zoom out and show you. I'm actually going to take the radar off for this. So the other thing that I want to mention here is if you're watching and this line of storms has already passed your area, if you're in Tarrant County, Denton County, and counties off to the west, the severe thunderstorm watch is still in effect for Denton and Tarrant County, but as this system continues to push off to the east, the watch is dropping off behind it. So you'll get this line of storms move through, and then after the line of storm moves through, you can go back to whatever activities that you were doing for the afternoon and evening. The storms are over for you. You're still just going to be seeing some gusty winds that are not thunderstorm related between 20 and 35. We have a wind advisory in effect until tomorrow morning. And then we just basically wind and rain is going to be associated with that. But once we get through this line, once it passes your area, you are done with the severe weather risk. So that's some good news for anyone watching. Someone just said sirens are sounding in the Colony area. That doesn't surprise me, just because still the National Weather Service is tagging these with destructive damage potential for 80-mile-per-hour winds. So we're keeping an eye on all these storms. There's the newest scan. It doesn't look like there's as much of a concerning area. Still watching. It's probably this little area to the north. This just passed Beltline Road on Highway 75, and I do believe that this is I-20. So for the question for Irving, yes, Irving is safe. The storms are pushing off to the east, and as you can see right here, that warning is just on the edge of Irving, but it's safe right now. Just expect rain. There's still going to be some lightning too, so I wouldn't be outside, but the severe weather threat for Irving looks to be over. Same for the community of Las Colinas, DFW Airport. The severe weather threat has passed. Just keep in mind, still lightning. And okay, so Liz just said the roof of her shop is gone in Richland Hills. If you can send us a photo, we'll pass that off to the National Weather Service. Either message our page if you have damage photos, or tag us. We'll try and look at that. But messaging our page gives us a better chance of seeing it. Sirens here in Mesquite. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me that there is sirens going off in Mesquite. That's because of the 80-mile-per-hour wind threat. Someone asked about Oak Cliff. Oak Cliff is basically going to see this 80-mile-per-hour wind threat as well. So like I said earlier, if you're in a wind threat, it is going. If you are in a warning, expect 80-mile-per-hour winds. Hold on, I'm trying to look at a report that's coming in. Yeah, Oak Cliff is just an 80-mile-per-hour wind threat. That is just to the east of the tornado warning at this time, so we're not worried about that. For the people that are saying, is there a second round? The answer is no. We're just expecting this line of storms. And just to show you, I'm going to take the radar off real quick, just to show you that it is going to be over. As this storm system progressively moves off to the east, that's when we're going to be seeing this watch continue to drop off. So as the storm moves out of your area further to the east, your severe weather threat is over. And in addition to that, they're dropping the severe thunderstorm watch, or tornado watch, excuse me, in addition to the storms leaving. So the tornado watch is being canceled for areas once the storm has passed. As you can see, it no longer includes our western counties. So we just got to get through this storm. There's still going to be some lingering showers and thunderstorms behind it, but those are not going to be severe just because that system is going to be moving through. So looking at some more comments. I think I got to all of them. So yeah, anyone who's worried about a second round, we're not expecting a second round here in the area. Like I said, once this entire line moves out of the area, that's when we're going to be talking the severe weather threat is greatly decreased. It's 0. In fact, I'm going to see if there's... In fact, just overnight tonight, there might be additional shower and thunderstorm activity, what we call wraparound, that follows behind. But that is not going to be severe. That's just going to be rainfall. And that would probably transition over into more of a flash flooding threat. Someone just asked about Greenville. We also just got... Not quite sure. that one as well to the south. So if you're in Greenville, real quick, we'll look up to the north. So Greenville, you're in the severe thunderstorm warning for the potential for 70 to 80 mile per hour winds, and that's just about it. I'll give you about 30 minutes before the storms get into the, or about, let's say 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes before that line makes its way into Greenville. Let's see. So yeah, once these storms pass, then you're not going to see the watch anymore. I'll take this off one more time. And in fact, good news, we have no tornado warnings within the viewing area at this time. So they allowed that tornado warning to expire. If you're watching from Irving, you have no severe weather risk right now. That storm is now off to your east. Someone just asked about Saxe, so let's show you. You are right now in the middle of it. I'm sure it's loud. I'm sure I'm sure there's crazy winds occurring too. To ease any fears, it doesn't look like there's any sort of rotation with this. We'll look at the elevated signature. It just looks like 60. And that's another warning for the areas further south. So if you're in Saxe and you're wondering, just we're gonna say 65, maybe 70 mile per hour winds right now. We'll get through this storm, so just wait until it passes. But right now, you're probably in the worst of it. But the storm is almost past. So just, excuse me, we'll give it about 30 minutes before it passes. Let's see. Someone else said, so Garland, that's next door to Saxe. Same thing for you. You're probably in the worst of it right now. 60, 65, maybe 70 plus mile per hour winds are likely occurring with this. We've seen reports of those all evening. So the winds are going to be over your area. Like I said, it doesn't appear that there's any sort of sign of spin-ups or anything like that with this. This is mainly just a damaging wind threat. Give it about 20 minutes, 20, maybe 30 minutes at max before it passes your area, and then you'll be fine. So to the north, for the viewer asking about the Colony, right now, Colony is in no warning. You are all clear except for the rain and the lightning. Your severe weather threat is over because that line has passed. So basically, and I'll go back to a wide view here, basically from Bonham through Collin, Dallas, into Johnson, Ellis counties, this is where this storm is going to be at the moment. Give it about another 30 minutes and then it'll be off to the east into our eastern counties. That's Hunt County, Rockwall, Kaufman, eventually approaching Van Zant County. 60 to 70 mile per hour winds are being reported, but gusts up to 80 are possible. For Deborah asking HEB area, is that for Hebron or for another location? Because we can look at the Hebron area. Let me pull that up here. Let's see. If you're talking about Hebron, you are outside of the warning. The storm has passed. We'll give you the all clear there. In fact, there it is. It's even further to the east now. All right, folks. So, catching up on some comments. Thank you guys for tuning in. Also be sure to download our free Weather 225 mobile app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. You can watch this live stream there as well. You can also get notification alerts and live interactive radar to track the storms along with us. So So right now, no tornado warnings, just to ease anyone's fear of a tornado threat. We're keeping a close eye on this, but it really doesn't look like these are that... they don't look like they're in that great of a position for a tornado risk. In fact, I'm looking at something back behind the scenes that we call mesoscale analysis. And there is a tornado. There are favorable conditions for tornadoes, pretty much with that part of the line of storms over not Denton, Dallas County into Ellis County. But right now, it doesn't look like there's much with these. It just looks like it's an intense line of storms with 70 to potentially 80 mile per hour winds. So we have this. Zoom out. I think they're probably going to drop this warning that includes Cleburne here shortly once that backside of the storm makes its way further to the east. So like we said, I tell you what, there's a bunch of tornado warnings with the southern part of this storm in central Texas. Central Texas looks like it's getting the worst of this, as a lot of these alerts, because we're connected to the alert system for the Weather Service in Fort Worth, they cover all the way down to just a few counties north of Austin. But closer to the Austin area, Gatesville, and Killeen, further to our south outside of our coverage area, that's where it looks like this line of storms is at its worst, at least at this point in time. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to be looking through. If you have any sort of damage photos once the storm has passed, and it is absolutely safe to do so, make sure that if you want to share those, you share those with us. You can either message directly our social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can tag us in a post. And we will share those if you want us to share those on the social media. But we're also going to relay those reports to the National Weather Service so that they can assess the damage and see what's going on at that moment in time. So if you have any sort of damage reports or images, you can pass those along to us. We will share those with the National Weather Service. But right now, fortunately, with this 60 mile per hour wind report that just came in, it doesn't look like this is the excessive 80 mile per hour winds that we've seen. And while those are still possible, I'm at least happy that right now we're getting mostly reports of 60 to 65 and not those intense 80 mile per hour winds like what we saw. So that's some good news there. I do believe that the southern part of this in Ellis and Johnson County is probably going to see some intense winds there too. So there's that. Let's look. Okay, so looking at the comments real quick, someone mentioned Seagoville. Let's take a quick look there. Let's see, there it is. So Seagoville, you are in between both warnings for Dallas and Kaufman County. This is for a 70 mile per hour wind gust. So fortunately, the warning text doesn't say the 80 mile per hour winds like it said just a little bit ago. There's a little pocket of strong winds to your north. We'll have to watch that because that might be an area that's trying to get a spin up together. So just stay indoors and away from windows. There's no immediate tornado threat with it, but when you get these little areas like that, that's when we were watching for that potential QLCS tornado risk, and that's when those come up fast. So it does look like potentially. I'm not quite sure what that. Let's see. Someone asked about Red Oak. Red Oak, Pecan Hill, Glen Heights. If you're in these areas, right now you're in the worst of it. You've got damaging winds on the way, or already occurring, excuse me, of up to 70. Ramiro, if you say you're in a manufactured home and worried, depends on your area for what time it'll be over. So Seagoville, you've got a little bit of time left with this, as the main part of it hasn't quite reached you. So I'd give it about 30 to 45 minutes before it passes your area and is out of there. Someone asked how bad for the Garland area. Garland, it's just damaging winds right now, but give it probably 10 to 15 minutes before it's left your area. So Jen asks, are there more storms coming through tonight? The answer is yes, but it's not severe. We're talking just moderate to heavy rain and maybe a few rumbles of thunder, but it's not going to be anything like this. The severe weather threat is going to be over once this system pushes through. As you can see, I'm going to actually take off the radar. No severe thunderstorm or tornado watches to the west. Once the system moves through, they're canceling all the watches in that area. Someone's asking about Rowlett. So the Rowlett area, same thing. You've got just a little bit more time with this, but the worst of it is moving on to the east. Same with Wiley. Wiley right now, currently in the worst of it. This is 60, maybe 70 mile per hour winds and small hail, but give it maybe 10 to 15 minutes or so before it makes its way out of your area. So just hold on for a couple minutes, and then this will eventually pass. Emergency manager in the Denton County area reports a partial building collapse at the Little Elm Shopping Center in El Dorado Parkway and Park Drive. Okay, so we're starting to get those damage reports coming out. And it looks like we have a tornado warning for the Bonham area. So we cover up here. So we're going to kind of shift gears because we don't have a tornado risk down south. So let's go and check this out. So if there was a tornado, it would be currently over Dodge City. So we're watching this. Real quick for the viewer asking about the Canton area, these storms are moving east at 45 miles an hour, so they'll reach you within the next hour and a half or so. And just be ready for damaging winds, but also, like we've been watching, there's been the potential for spin-ups that can come up quickly. But right now, we're probably going to see this move into that area within the next hour or so. Someone asked about Greenville. Greenville, the storm has not quite reached the heart of Greenville yet, but we're expecting 60, maybe even 70 miles an hour. So just get ready for those strong winds like we've been seeing all night in Greenville. Let's go back up to the north into the Bonham area. I do believe that if there was a tornado trying to occur, it would be this portion right over Dodge City, and I do believe that that is Highway 82. So right now that rotation is currently between Highway 82 and Highway 82. So that's where Highway 82 kind of splits there. So Quinlan, that is in Hunt County. That I believe, let me look. I'm not too familiar with that city, so I don't know if it's north of Greenville or south. Oh, there it is. So Quinlan, same thing. The winds haven't quite reached you yet. Just expect heavy, heavy rain. and damaging winds of 60, potentially even 70 miles an hour. So we have this, and actually there's a cool little weather tidbit. So notice how bad the radar signature is up here near Bonham and how messy it is. We don't have a radar that really sees well in northeast Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, and they're going to actually put in a new radar on top of the water tower in Tarrant to give us better eyes on the storm for future events like this. So unfortunately we don't have it for this event, but that's going to be very helpful in the future. So let's look. Someone asked for Mansfield. Hold on, let me see. That was a big rumble of thunder where I'm at. So for Mansfield, your severe weather threat, it's over. The only thing to expect at this point is just going to be still just lightning kind of hanging around and heavy rainfall. But basically, DFW, the immediate 4 central DFW counties, Dallas, Collin, Denton, and Tarrant, are in the all clear for the severe weather risk as this continues to move off to the east. So we don't want to overlook anything down here to the south, but really there's not a lot to talk about. I'm going to put it into velocity. It's just 60 to 70 mile per hour winds and heavy rain and lightning. Same with the majority of this line so far. There's not a whole lot to talk about, fortunately. Not anything with an immediate tornado risk except for this one in Bonham, but that's pretty much moving outside of our coverage area here shortly. But that area of spin, if you're watching from this area, that rotation would be located pretty much near Windham, Dodge City, and Honey Grove. Hi. And behind the scenes, if you hear any sounds, that's our mascot, Chase the Weather Dog. He's coming over to the desk to say hi, apparently. So, let's see if I can actually get a camera up or something. So that's what we got going on here. Really, fortunately, not a whole lot to talk about. We're probably going to start to see more of these damage reports coming in, like that one that I mentioned a little bit ago near Little Elm, of that shopping center that collapsed or had a partial collapse. Fortunately, that looks to be the only big damage report that we've gotten so far tonight. So basically, DFW, the I-35 corridor that goes through DFW, it's pretty much clear. Now, for the area near Hillsborough, that's not the same case, but we're going to give DFW the all clear. If you're wondering, is there going to be additional development tonight? The answer is yes. We are going to see wraparound precipitation, which is just additional rain that kind of loops back in, and that is from the big area of low pressure. It just kind of, think about like a hurricane when it has the wraparound bands. That is what we're going to be talking about. So there's probably going to be some thunder with that too, but it's not going to be like what we're seeing right now. Marlene asks, in Dallas, will airplanes be able to leave? Right now, I don't think they will for at least the next 30, just to make sure that this has fully passed. The other thing is, you don't want to be taking off in the direction of these, so it might be a little bit longer. I'm not quite sure the protocol for the area airports with Squallines, but for me, I would think that they'd wait probably another little bit or so, just because they don't want to be taking off in the direction of these. And really, there's not a good way to go around these if you're going east right now, just because this is a very long line of storms extending into Oklahoma. Okay, so someone said that they have a neighbor that was able to get their flight to take off, so maybe we got some flights taking off. Again, I'm not quite sure what the protocol is for this, but for the airports with these squall lines, but if not now, give it another little bit, and then they'll probably be able to. And yeah, the flights, we knew that DFW Airport had a complete ground stop before these storms moved in. I wasn't quite sure about Love Field, so thank you for passing that report along. And that is a lot of flights to cancel. Sometimes I forget just how big our metro area is when I just when you hear that like 400 flights are canceled. Lived in Dallas my entire life, seen it grow, and sometimes I forget it's this big of an area. So, yeah, right now, fortunately, not a whole lot to talk about, like I said. I'm going to take some of these reports off. Still just a bunch of 65-mile-per-hour wind reports. I'll gladly take that over the 80-mile-per-hour winds, though, because there's a big difference between 65-mile-per-hour winds and 80-mile-per-hour winds. So we've got this going on. Let's check these winds again. Looks like some of the strongest winds might be located just in the Ellis County area and into portions of Hill County too. Kaufman County. Areas to the east still expect 65, maybe 70-mile-per-hour winds with these, but right now it doesn't look like it's that destructive 80, 85-mile-per-hour wind threat that we saw back in the Metroplex. So hopefully, because we haven't seen that many reports of damage, except for the one area in Little Elm, that we didn't see that much damage from this. Caddo Mills is reporting power outages with within the city. 65-mile-per-hour winds in Terrell just a short time ago. That is a delayed report, so a lot of reports of damaging wind gusts, a lot of reports of power outages, not necessarily from the Weather Wire, but seeing just a bunch of reports online. In fact, I'm actually looking behind the scenes real quick at the power outage US map. And if you're ever curious to see power outage maps in the U.S., the website for that is Power Outage US. And it looks like there's 323,000 customers throughout the state that are without power. So right now they're tracking about 112,000 power outages in Dallas County, 100,000 power outages in Collin County, 45,000, or Tarrant County, excuse me, 45,000 power outages here in the county of Collin County, and 20,000 power outages in Denton County, 2,000 in Grayson, and 611 in Fannin County. So quite a bit of power outages here. So I'm going to actually post that real quick. So if you're watching us and you're without power, let us know. This is going to help us kind of figure out where all the power outages and stuff are located. The other thing we're going to be watching is with some of these heavy rain storms, we're going to see a lot of sitting water on the roadways. So if you're driving, just be careful for ponding on the roadways. We might start to see some of that occurring over the next little bit and transition over to more of a flooding concern for some areas that have already seen quite a bit of rainfall. 14,000 customers without power in Parker County. So getting a lot of power outages from the system, and it's not at all surprising, just because we've seen so much damaging wind across the area. It's just absolutely crazy. And I'm going to post these real quick to my social media. So if you're just now tuning in, we just mentioned there's several 100,000 customers in the DFW area without power. I do believe it was like 128,000 customers in the Dallas County area. So power outages are also becoming a big deal in DFW. 100,000 out in Tarrant, 112 out in Dallas, 14,000 out in Parker, almost 3,000 in Wise County, 21,000 in Denton, and 45,000 are without power there as well. I tell you what, we are very fortunate that we didn't see the tornado risk that could have played out here in the metro. Usually, and if you tuned into our morning forecast video that we posted, I mentioned this is one of those forecasts that you're glad if it's not completely spot on. We had a very significant severe weather threat here in North Texas, and we are very, very fortunate that we made it through without any sort of major tornadic activity or even baseball-sized hail activity in the metro. Conditions were quite favorable for that. And we are lucky that we made it through without that. Unfortunately, though, we are having to deal with this significant wind threat in the area with 80-mile-per-hour winds. So there's still some damaging storms, but thankfully we didn't see widespread damaging severe hail. And if you're curious about the power outages, you can look away from the stream for a second. On our main account, the one that you're watching this on, we just posted the exact numbers. So if you're curious for the exact numbers of power outages, click on the little icon with our logo and visit our homepage here on Facebook, and we've got the numbers up for power outages, in case anyone was curious. All right, folks, so we have been live for a good almost 3 hours. We're going to be keeping a close eye on these storms. Right now, the greatest tornadic threat looks to be south of the area. There's not a whole lot to talk about with this. So if you're curious, what's my area going to see? If you're in a severe thunderstorm warning, that's just about it. 60 to 70 mile per hour winds are possible. Maybe some very, very small hail in some instances. Right now, not seeing an immediate tornado threat for the immediate coverage area of ours, but you know, with the QLCS risk, that might change. But right now, the segment doesn't look favorable quite for that. If that does change, we will let you know. We'll come back to coverage, but we're going to go ahead and take just a quick little break because we've been going nonstop for about 3 hours now. So that's a look at what we've got going on right now. Another thing before we leave, make sure that you follow this Facebook account because you'll get notified when we come back live. Also, once the line has passed your area, then you're going to be clear of the severe risk. If you're wondering if we're going to see additional storms tonight, the answer is yes. It's just they're not going to be severe. It's just going to be moderate to heavy rainfall and even some lightning. So that's a look at that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back to Facebook Live if necessary. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to throw it back into the regularly scheduled programming. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for updates if needed. And also make sure you download that free Weather 225 mobile app. And if you have any sort of damage, call our friends at My Pro Construction and Roofing and refer Weather 225. I'm sure they're going to have a very busy week ahead.